For a more immersive experience, I recommend using headphones. It was the summer of 1996 in Tamanagorsk, a summer they called the summer of 13 disappearances. I was just a kid back then, and the 90s were a time of street kiosks, turbo bubblegum, denim jackets, and disposable cameras. It was a tough time, but we grew up without knowing what a smartphone was. My older brother had a pager, and in our neighborhood, that made him the coolest guy around. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to tell you about a VHS tape. A tape that still haunts my nightmares sometimes. That creepy sound of rewinding film, the mechanical whir of the VCR swallowing the cassette into its dark depths. We were on summer break. School had ended in June, and our parents worked from morning till night just to feed us. At 14, we were left to ourselves and could do whatever we wanted. We'd stay out until dark, hanging out on the streets, at friends' houses, or in video salons. These were basement-level rooms where, for a few cents, you could sit and watch worn-out tapes of action movies or horror flicks. Places like that always smelled of dust and cigarette smoke, and the light barely broke through the grimy windows. But when a new pirated tape was playing, the whole world disappeared. We loved horror movies, and the scarier the better. Hellraiser, It, A Nightmare on Elm Street. We devoured them all and would have given anything for a chance to get our nerves rattled. A Nightmare on Elm Street had been on VHS for ages. Andrei got his own VCR, a birthday gift. It was used, of course. His mom couldn't afford a new one. But even a used VCR was a king's gift back then. When Andrei's mom left for work, we'd watch tapes all day long. Some of them we'd seen so many times, the film was worn thin. The kids from our block got by collecting glass containers. We'd turn in bottles, especially the prized Cheburashkas, half-liter brown beer bottles. One of those was enough for a piece of gum. Our morning started with a hunt for bottles. We'd scour the neighborhood yards, dumpsters, and abandoned buildings, grabbing anything we could find. Sometimes we'd get lucky and find something valuable, like an old metal kettle to sell for scrap or circuit boards to take to the electronics market. But usually the haul was modest, just a couple of bottles or so. If our findings weren't enough for what we wanted, we'd resort to trickery, swiping a couple of our mom's 3-liter glass jars from home. That would put a solid sum in our pockets. Of course, a scolding would follow later. What am I supposed to use for canning jam? But we didn't care. For a new tape, we were ready to risk anything. We'd take the bottles and jars we found to the lady by the garages, and then we'd rush over to Uncle Kolya at the market for another tape. "So, is it enough for 2? Andrei would ask. "Only for 1, I'd sigh. Uncle Kolya's stall was in the market, always crowded with people. Some sold jeans, some sold stolen electronics, and some, like Uncle Kolya, sold pirated tapes. He was a gray-haired man in his 40s, wearing a leather jacket and sporting gold teeth. Our regular supplier. He always knew what to offer kids like us. That day we ran up to exchange the Gremlins tape we'd already watched for something new. Uncle Kolya flashed us his golden smile and nodded toward a large plaid duffel bag. "Hey kids, look what I got. Fresh delivery. Just came in today. Dig around in there. You'll definitely find something." We dove into the huge plaid bag as if it were a sack full of presents. Action, thrillers, comedies. "Hey, look at this!" Andrei suddenly whistled with excitement. He was holding a tape with no cover, no title, just a stylized skull painted in red on the side. The skull looked crude, which only made it more intriguing. The tape seemed to be quietly telling us that its contents could scare anyone. That's what we came for. "Oh, that one," Uncle Kolya said. taking the find from Andrei and turning it over in his hands. "You know, kids, you might be a little young for this stuff. This isn't Gremlins or Freddy Krueger. Who knows what's on there? Let me watch it myself first. Then I'll decide whether to sell it. All right?" "We're not little kids," Andrei protested. "Andrei, come on," I shushed him. "We're going to end up with no movie at all." "Fine, Uncle Kolya, next time." We reluctantly continued digging, trying to find something just as good. All the other movies looked ordinary. In the end, we had to take an action movie, Bloodsport with Van Damme. We slapped down our copy of Gremlins, which we had been thrilled with just a couple of days before. The Gremlins on the cover looked at us sadly as we said goodbye and walked away from the stall. Suddenly, Andrei stopped. He looked at me seriously and whispered, "Don't look back and don't run." I looked at him confused, and then with a conspiratorial grin, he pulled the very same tape with the skull on it from his pocket. "You stole it?" I almost choked in surprise. "Yep." Andrei nodded importantly, puffing out his chest. "Cool, right? Now we've got something to watch tonight." We couldn't wait any longer and ran home as fast as we could, eager to see what this tape with the creepy skull was hiding. Andrei's mom worked around the clock, so we usually saved the scariest movies for the night to make it more atmospheric. I'll never forget how we lay on the carpet in front of the TV, mesmerized by its glow. Back then, it felt like it would always be this way, that we'd never grow up, that there was nothing more important than horror movies, our friendship, and the light of the TV in that cozy living room. How wrong I was. But at the time, it felt perfect. A whole night ahead, an empty apartment, and the anticipation of something new and unusual. Once dusk fell, we put the tape into the VCR. The old Panasonic whirred and coughed, as if it didn't like the cassette. The screen flickered, then once more, then nothing. I was afraid the film was damaged or just blank. But no, an image soon appeared, though it was full of static and interference. Lines ran across the screen as if the magnetic tape was badly scratched. The sound was quiet with a hissing noise. The silence of the apartment only amplified the sinister atmosphere. The image was jerky. At first, it was hard to make anything out, but then we saw it. A dilapidated building in the frame. Gray concrete walls, shabby and dirty. Maybe an old factory or a warehouse. It was clear the recording was made with a home camera. The image shook and trembled, the angles constantly changing. The camera work quickly made me feel sick and nauseous. "This is total crap," Andrei muttered, but I just shook my head. Something about this video was captivating. I had to know what would happen next. The camera moved forward, gliding through empty corridors, occasionally catching peeling paint and cobwebs. Then, a low, barely audible whisper began. The image twitched again, and suddenly a door swung open sharply. All by itself. I swear I saw that no one touched it. My hair stood on end. I swallowed nervously. "What is this craziness?" Andrei repeated. I frowned. My gut was telling me we should turn this off, but I couldn't look away. Something was forcing me to stare at the screen. Without blinking. Behind the door was darkness. The whispering grew louder, more sinister and creepy, in a completely unfamiliar language. Suddenly, a spot of light appeared in the frame, then another, as if candles were being lit one by one. Soon we could make out blurry figures in the darkness. There was something strange about them, unnatural. They slowly became clearer, as if someone was developing a photograph, I strained my eyes, trying to see what was happening on the screen. I wish I had never seen it. On the screen were children, boys and girls, our age and younger. I counted at least a dozen of them. I realized what had seemed so strange. They weren't standing, they were suspended from the ceiling. Dirty tubes extended from their shriveled, dried-out bodies and disappeared into the darkness. The children's figures swayed slowly from the ceiling, in time with the same whispering sound. But that wasn't the scariest part. It was their eyes. They were wide open, frozen in terror. That's Sasha Amelchenko, Andrei stammered. In those days, nobody knew about the internet. We got our news from newspapers and from people we knew. The name Sasha Amelchenko was familiar to everyone in our hometown of Tamanogorsk. The boy had vanished from his home without a trace. They had been looking for him for the past couple of weeks. The papers said there was no note, no clues, nothing. The apartment door was locked from the inside. When they broke it down, they found things thrown around, broken furniture, and the TV still on. Our TV continued to show the gruesome scenes that made my blood run cold. I looked where Andrei was pointing. It really was Sasha. He looked as if all the blood had been drained from him, but there was no mistaking him. Something dark was flowing through the tube connected to his body. Suddenly, the image jerked again, and in the back of the room, where the plastic tubes led, something moved. The creepy whisper grew louder. Something stirred in the shadows. A sound came, heavy and low, as if someone was breathing with a painful effort. The camera began to shake. The suspended bodies started to convulse. The children's backs arched, their eyes rolled back, and bloody foam came from their mouths. Then I saw two glowing eyes, yellow with red veins. One of them had two dim pupils. A dark figure rose from the darkness, stretching toward the ceiling. It didn't look human or animal. It was something formless, dark. It moved not with steps, but as if it were gliding, smoothly and silently. It was looking for something, its eyes scanning the surroundings. Its breathing was raspy. The image was glitching more and more, as if the VCR couldn't handle what it was showing. "Turn it off!" Andrei yelled, jumping up from the couch. But I didn't move. The yellow eyes slid across the screen. I felt like I'd been slashed. The eyes looked at me for a moment, then went back. The whisper became deafening, filling the entire space. And then I understood. It had found us. It felt us. It saw us. The figure rushed toward the camera. It was very close now. I felt paralyzed. I couldn't move. The bloodshot eyes filled the entire frame. And then, everything went black. The next second, I saw Andrei. He was holding the VCR's plug, which he had ripped from the wall socket with a tug. I felt a wave of relief, as if I had just escaped real danger. I looked at Andrei gratefully and nodded. I was too shocked to say a word. "What the hell was that? What was that?" he repeated, staring at the turned-off television, trying to process what we had just seen. It took us a while to compose ourselves, but then we discussed it and decided we had to take the tape to the police. "I used to play chess with Sasha," Andrei said grimly. "Maybe they can still do something with this." I went to the VCR and tried to eject the tape, but it was stuck. No way. Andrei joined my futile attempts. "What the hell is wrong with this thing?" he swore. "Okay, let's figure it out tomorrow. Maybe we can pry it out, or call Valerka. He knows how to fix things." "All right, time for bed?" "Yeah, right. Like I'm going to sleep now." Despite that, we passed out almost instantly, probably from the stress we'd been through. But our sleep didn't last long. I woke up to a quiet noise, the sound of film rewinding. It gave me a horrible sense of déjà vu. Half asleep, I figured it was just a glitch. The tape had been stuck in the VCR, and now the mechanism had released it. That meant everything would be fine tomorrow. I sighed with relief, about to turn over to my other side. But then the whisper started. The same whisper in that incomprehensible language. Piercing and sharp, as if someone was standing right behind us. I opened my eyes and stared at the television, which had suddenly lit up with a dim light. An image appeared on the screen, again, but it was no longer the creepy abandoned building. The camera was showing a small alley, bushes, benches, a forgotten ball. It moved slowly down the street, and for some reason, I felt uneasy. Something wasn't right here. Turning off the alley, the camera continued, capturing flower beds planted in old car tires, then potholes in the asphalt. Suddenly the camera swerved and turned toward a brightly lit, yellow 24-hour kiosk. And then I realized why I felt so uneasy. This was our neighborhood, our street, and the camera was moving directly toward Andrei's building. "Hey!" I nudged my friend's shoulder, and he jumped up, clutching the blanket. "Look!" The camera was slowly approaching building 19, then 21, where we were. It glided smoothly past the apartment entrances until it stopped in front of ours. "Holy shit!" Andrei whispered hoarsely. The sinister whisper was now so loud it felt like we could physically hear it. I rushed to the window and looked down. No one. Meanwhile, the camera was inside the building, slowly panning across the apartment doors. Apartment 3, 7, 10. We were in the last one. The whisper grew louder and louder, crawling inside my head, filling the space. I covered my ears. The number 15 flashed on the screen. It was right outside our door. "We have to turn it off. We have to turn off this damn tape." I went to the VCR and saw that the plug was still lying on the floor next to the socket. It wasn't plugged in. The sinister whisper was now coming from right behind us. We didn't just hear it, we could feel it on our skin. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, a light tap. We were paralyzed with fear. I couldn't move a finger. Suddenly, the image flickered. The camera jerked and the screen was flooded with darkness. And then they appeared. The eyes, huge, sinister, staring right at us as if burning through our souls. My body started to shake, but not from fear anymore. Some powerful force was playing with my body. Everything in the room began to move. The world turned upside down. The curtains started to fly around. Books, dishes, papers, pillows, everything swirled in a demonic dance. The eyes on the screen stared right at me, as if they knew all my fears, all my thoughts. Andrei bolted for the door, but in that instant, something grabbed him and pulled him back, straight into the screen. It was like invisible tentacles were clinging to him, dragging him into the abyss. He fought, but it was useless. I saw his legs, his waist, his chest disappear into the dark screen. Andrei screamed with all his might. I jumped up and grabbed his hand, pulling back, trying to hold on to my friend, but he continued to be sucked in. In a panic, I grabbed a heavy statuette from the table and smashed it into the VCR with all my strength. One hit, the screen flickered. A second hit, the picture shook. A third, and I shattered the VCR into pieces. It was too late. Andrei was gone. But his screams still echoed in my ears. The cassette lay on the floor. I grabbed it and slammed it against the floor with all my might. The guts of black film spilled out. I started tearing at it and kept going until only tiny shreds were left. I sat there, among the wreckage, breathing heavily, my body trembling. I couldn't process what had just happened. I couldn't believe Andrei was gone. My friend was gone forever. The 13th disappearance of that summer. Since then, I try to avoid screens. I use a feature phone. I don't have a TV or a laptop at home. Yeah, a lot of people think I'm weird, but I've accepted it. Who knows? Maybe it will come back, find me, and open its terrible yellow eyes once more. If you liked the story, you can support the channel with a like and a subscription. See you next time.